Hello and welcome to another standard gameplay video on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're taking a look at Monoblack Burn, as our deck features 3 copies of Corrupt, a 6-mana sorcery that deals damage to any targets equal to the number of swamps we control, and we also gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So a nice blast from the past that's been reprinted in the Brothers War, and with 26 swamps and a lot of control elements, our deck is sometimes capable of winning the game by just casting 1 or maybe 2 Corrupt. And then, of course, to support Corrupt, we have a ton of powerful black cards, such as Shieldred the Apocalypse, which can also drain the opponent as they draw cards, while gaining life for us whenever we draw cards. We've got Invoke Despair as another great incentive to go mono-black, as the opponent will have to sacrifice a creature, enchantment, and planeswalker, otherwise we get to draw a card, and the opponent also loses 2 life for each one of those that they cannot sacrifice. We've got Sorin as another source of card advantage with the +1, can make 2/3 flying life-linking vampire tokens with a -2, and then we also have Reckoner Bankbuster as another great mana sink that can provide extra card advantage. We've got some cheap spot removal spells with Cut Down at 1 mana and at 2 mana Go for the Throat to destroy a non-artifact creature at instant speed, so perfect for answering opposing copies of Shieldred before we take any additional draw steps. We've got 3 copies of Malicious Malfunction at 3 mana, since of course we no longer have access to the Meathook Massacre, but it's still nice to have access to a sweeper effect in this deck, especially when facing white aggro decks like the Soldiers archetype, and even against mono-red there's plenty of creatures that benefit from getting exiled, like the Phoenix Chick and even Squee at 3 mana, and then also shines against cards like Tenacious Underdog, which will also end up getting exiled after getting -2/-2. We've got the Celestus to help us accelerate our mana, to maybe cast a turn 4 Invoke Despair, maybe a turn 5 Corrupt, dealing 5 damage, can still be enough to swing the match in our favor. And then a Trespasser can be a way to crew Bankbuster early on, to play offense and defense, can exile opposing cards from the opponent's graveyard, and maybe even our graveyard if there's a creature involved, to drain the opponent. And then we can also potentially affect the day and night cycle with the Celestus to transform it into a 4/4 if that's better for us, and potentially exile multiple cards at once. And then just 26 basic swamps in our mana base for Corrupt purposes, so no Abandoned Mire, no creature lands, and we'll see how that works out. So let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, hand seems decent. Bankbuster can be crewed by Trespasser, we've got a bit of removal. And double Bankbuster, great for the grindy matchups. Opponent looks to be on Soldiers, so finding Malfunction to wipe the board is going to be key, especially against Unearth from Frontliner. Opponent's got early Thalia. For now we can still play Trespasser to play defense here, and then I think I prefer hanging back instead of crewing Bankbuster to hit for 4, since we're the control deck in this matchup. Siege Veteran can grow Thalia, and if they also attack with a Frontliner they could get past Bankbuster. But nope, opponent just sends in Thalia, which is probably not a great idea. They will get a replacement soldier at least. Okay, so now can play another Bankbuster and pass, or maybe go for the Throat Siege Veteran before it puts a counter somewhere. And then we can still either draw or go for the Throat again. Although it's maybe to my advantage to passing and letting it switch to night time. And then we can kill Siege Veteran right now maybe. And Guardian's fine. Still dies to Malicious Malfunction, so that's the card we really want to find here to put the game away. It will switch back to daytime. Although Bankbuster is a great way to pass a turn and let it switch to night. Celestus can also control day and night cycles. So play Celestus, and then I think just pass. And if our opponent has something like a Brutal Cathar, they'll have to discard to get rid of Trespasser, and we can still crew Bankbuster to have an extra blocker. It's going to be another Siege Veteran that I may want to take out before they get to place a counter somewhere. And a frontliner, okay. Malicious malfunction. Let's find one, shall we? Guardian's gonna attack and then lists to attack past Bankbuster. Or I guess they can enlist two of them. But now they'll have to discard their last card to keep Guardian alive. And I guess we'll let them scry first. Opponent lets it go. Do we draw main phase with Bankbuster? Might as well. And there it is. Okay. Would our opponent block Trespasser if I attacked with it? I don't think so. Exile a Siege Veteran. And then Malfunction also exiles, so no unearthing of Frontliner, and this should just be game over. Alright, Wandering Emperor can get rid of Trespasser, so that was probably the card they didn't want to discard to keep Guardian alive. But we can cash in our Bankbuster to make a pilot. Crew Author Bankbuster to kill Wandering Emperor, and then Sorin can provide more card advantage. Not too worried about making vampires, and our opponent concedes. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a decent hand against aggro with some cheap removal spells, and then a Bankbuster to pull ahead. Opponent on Grixis instead, so gonna be a grindy matchup instead. Our hand's not great, but Bankbuster helps. Fine to pass a turn. Opponent's got nothing for now. So we can draw. And then hoping to find Invoke Despair as usual. For now, no point in drawing main phase, since there's no 2-drop I would want to draw and be able to play. At least now with double corrupt, we've got a late game plan of burning the opponent out. Shieldred's unlikely to stick the landing here, with opponent holding 4 mana. So I think we'd rather just draw with Bankbuster once again, keep up some instant speed removal, and then next turn maybe either crew Bankbuster with a pilot token or with Shieldred. And if I have 6 mana, I can maybe resolve Shieldred into something like Make Disappear. Opponent making 3 Devils, which just end up dying to Malicious Malfunction. So the question now is, do I still want to make a pilot token? And I guess I do, and just trade for a Devil to save myself some damage, since the pilot's gonna die anyway. Yeah, this seems fine. We get to resolve Shieldred. And crew Bankbuster and attack with it. So now even if they answer Shieldred, we can still keep beating down with Bankbuster as we play Trespasser next. And doesn't seem like they had any instant speed answers, at least. Invoke Despair is a good one. But does not answer a Bankbuster. And yeah, we're just gonna hang on to Corrupt. Even though we could just Corrupt 2 turns in a row, I think I prefer the extra pressure that Trespasser provides. And then I'll exile my own Shieldred here, since our opponent doesn't have any creatures in the graveyard. Can crew Bankbuster, hit for 4, and then play another one and draw still. And then we can maybe finish the job with Corrupt. And probably only need to resolve one of them to win the game. Invoke Calamity is not bad, can get back Invoke Despair. So that happens. We fall to 11. So we're also getting low, but opponent's not playing Corrupts. And another Trespasser is decent, as we find Corrupt number 3. So, yeah, interesting choice. Kind of like play Trespasser, crew Bankbuster attack, see what happens. Can exile burn down the house in case they have another Invoke Calamity. But now that that worked, I'm okay drawing to maybe hit a land drop. Or play another Bankbuster. And then now, Corrupt is definitely lethal. So what can our opponent do here with 8 mana? Burn down the house, make a couple devils, and those are gonna stay home. Okay, so opponent could still have a Make Disappear to counter Corrupt. Is there a better way around that, potentially? Let's say I kill 2 devils with spot removal. Then I can still have another one back to block. Although I could cash in the final Bankbuster to crew another one. And then we're still 1 damage short, potentially. So, yeah, casting a Corrupt and see what happens is probably step 1. And there's a negate. Okay. So in that case, I guess make a pilot. Crew Bankbuster. And attack. And then I can exile Trespasser to put the opponent to 4, so Bankbuster's lethal. And we can still cut down if necessary. Opponent does set up a triple block. So now if I were to cut down, then they could still deal damage to Trespasser, but they would have to discard a taunt to ward. So that's unlikely to be the case. So we'll cut down a devil. So they're probably just killing the pilots. Get to keep Trespasser. And then we have 2 more lethal Corrupts we can try and fire off here. While the opponent still needs to find answers to our current board. Opponent passes, it's nighttime. And yeah, we'll probably just move to combat. Don't want to crew, since at least now our opponent needs to actually discard a card to kill our Graveyard Glutton, although, yeah, I could see the advantage of crewing. Graveyard Glutton is the only way to crew at the moment. Move to combat. If they kill this one, I can still crew another, so it'll probably wait for it to be attacking. Galvanic Iteration, okay. And a big score, so opponent gets to copy that and go digging. Hopefully they didn't find any counter spells and we can just end the game with a Corrupt. And there's an Abrade. Alright. That would not have been enough to answer a Glutton. And then we can Corrupt and still draw with Bankbuster afterwards. Invoke Calamity, gets back Negate. And they can get back a big score as well. Okay, so the game keeps going. And then, don't recall if we hit a line drop for the turn yet, but I'll just pass with go for the throat available. Okay, opponent tries to take out Glutton with a Maestro's Charm. That works. Another Bankbuster and a Sorin. So I don't think I want to fire off Corrupt, because that would be most of my turn gone. Want to try and kind of leverage our position where the opponent needs to answer or respect a Bankbuster. Could make a Vampire, could just draw extra cards, and maybe start there. And then I can still play Celestus and activate Bankbuster. Find a Shieldred, okay. Now the problem here is if I take 4 down to 6, opponent could go Iteration, copy something like an Invoke Despair, and then we would just be dead. Although, are we dead regardless to double Invoke Despair? I have 1 Planeswalker to sacrifice, so... yeah, I guess we would take 10 damage. So I guess I might as well still reveal Shieldred. And then Shieldred crewing a Bankbuster could be lethal. And there's Invoke Calamity. Goes to Consider and burn down the house. No point in crewing Bankbuster in response because it's gonna die. And Sorin's also gonna die here. So that was a pretty good one. Alright, we're dead to an Invoke Despair. And our opponent may double it too here. Big score instead. Alright, if our opponent draws into Invoke, we're dead. And they've probably found another counterspell for Corrupt. And that's game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, and seems fine. Got the early cut down, can even play it after playing Celestus on 3. And then maybe set up a turn 4 Invoke Despair. Opponent with an early Harvester, which we can take out. So Mardu gets both access to Wedding Announcement as well as Fable of the Mirror Breaker on 3. Although they're both enchantments, we can potentially answer with Invoke Despair. It's gonna be a Trespasser first. I'll play a Celestus, keep it daytime, and allow for an Invoke Despair next turn. Trespasser attacks. Does not want to exile their own Harvester, so maybe they have a way of bringing it back. Another Trespasser. Yeah, Invoke seems like a relatively clean answer to one of them at least. And then next turn we can play Shieldred and draw with Bankbuster to at least gain 2 life. Although, as you know, Invoke Despair tends to find more copies of itself. Trespasser purely focused on our graveyard. If our opponent did have something like a Wedding Announcement, we could first kill the token with Cut Down and then Invoke Despair deals with Trespasser. Opponent's got their own Bankbuster instead. Okay, so Invoke versus Shieldred. Both great options. I think giving Shieldred a try is reasonable, although our opponent's hand is likely to have some cheap removal spells, including potentially a Destroy Evil. So, let's just go with Invoke Despair. And there's another one. We've all been there. Opponent draws with a blood token since they're struggling to hit their land drops. And now we're at the point where Corrupt is looking quite nice. Opponent's got their own Shieldred. And they have a Bankbuster they could keep on defense to protect against a third Invoke Despair. But what are the odds that we drew another one? So we'll draw, take some damage of Shieldred. And invoke. And then we can still draw with Bankbuster. We are falling pretty low ourselves here. If our opponent can crew Bankbuster, we're in danger. But next turn can play Shieldred, draw with Bankbuster. And that's gonna come to the rescue. Paragon explains why they wouldn't exile their own creatures earlier. So we're at 4. Corrupt off the top, one time. Not quite. Shieldred instead. Alright, we'll settle for Shieldred. And then... do I just draw main phase with Bankbuster in case we find an answer to Paragon? Go up to 6. Now opponent could still have a 2-mana answer for Shieldred, replay Harvester to crew Bankbuster, and then I could be dead. So playing Sorin, make a Vampire, could maybe play around it a little bit. Yeah, maybe that's just a safer play. And pass.
I bring my own army.
And then we can also crew Bankbuster if they kill Shieldred to have an extra blocker on the ground. So this is the perfect spot to top deck or Corrupt to end the game. But can't really complain after having cast triple Invoke Despair this game already. Opponent ready to mount a comeback. Trespasser probably keeps going after our graveyard. Maybe exiles their own Shieldred since that one they cannot replay with Paragon. But nope, they exiled Harvester. And plays another one. Okay, so they can attack with Paragon, forcing a chump from the Vampire token. But opponent's gonna hang back. We draw. And probably want to draw with Bankbuster first, so we can maybe afford to reveal a more expensive card with Sorin's Plus ability. Or we may end up deciding to just make another Vampire instead. Found a swamp. So we can cut down Harvester, opponent can crew Bankbuster in response. Don't think that sets up any amazing attacks, although we have another Shieldred in hand, which the opponent doesn't know about, so can force him to trade for Shieldred and play a backup. Opponent double blocks. So could cut down one of them, although I think I'm happier just accepting the trade and playing a replacement Shieldred. Opponent gains 2 of the Paragon and play Shieldred. And I think I just make another Vampire here to be safe. Still have Bankbuster as another card draw engine. As well as Celestus that can maybe loot away some swamps. Opponent draws, that's 2 life from Shieldred. So now the Vampires could be lethal. Opponent's probably not picturing a handful of swamps over here. Trespasser can gain 1 up to 3, so the Vampires no longer do it by themselves. Alright, go for the throat, we'll finally do it. But let's see if we can maybe find a Corrupt Would be a fitting way to end this. Nope, just a cut down. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Hand is not perfect, but I'll give it a try. Especially against aggro, we've got a decent hand. A red-white, turn 1 Swiss Spear, okay. So happy I kept this now. So is this maybe a prowess virtuoso deck? Infantry, that could get out of hand. But we'll just get rid of it now and then curve into Shieldred. And they may not have any clean answers to it. And yep, there's a Virtuoso. Could still maybe get rid of it with an Invoke Despair, even if our opponent has a way of giving it hexproof and indestructible. Now with Swiss Spear they can throw under the bus instead. And I'm not going to take any risks, our opponent probably has a pump spell in hand. Another Virtuoso. Trespasser can also come in handy. Okay, feel fine attacking now. Trespasser, get the creature. And now we're in a prime position to top deck Corrupt to win the game. Opponent attacks all out. So what makes sense for them to have? I think I'm gonna block Etching and see what's up. Igancho makes sense. Still has to discard to ward. And an Invoke Despair. Should be pretty decent here. Sack a creature and an enchantment, still take 2. And that's enough for a concession. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand's probably going to be too slow, with no 1, 2 or 3 mana plays. Double Sorin into Corrupt. But we're on the draw, so we may be able to find some cheaper interaction, and who likes to mulligan? Alright, Malfunction could come in handy for opponents a more aggressively slanted deck. Red-black and Underdog, perfect to exile with Malfunction. So let's see if they add another creature to the board that dies to it. Alright, let's just fire it off now. Next turn play Sorin. And we'll draw.
For the sake of all Innistrad, my will must
Plenty of swamps in hand, so can already deal 8 damage with Corrupts eventually. See what Sorin finds. A swamp. Bankbuster can draw, although can wait until the opponent's turn. Trespasser goes after Sorin. Finding an Invoke Despair would be a clean answer. Shieldred means we'll have to draw a response. Okay, so I might have to Corrupt Shieldred, now go for the throat and answer for it too. Okay, so let's just kill Shieldred and then we can keep plussing with Sorin. Find another answer, okay, so that can maybe answer Trespasser. So we'll pass it back. And before they get a chance to stake it out, plenty of swamps we can discard. And draw with Bankbuster end of turn. Opponent may have a ton of removal in hand themselves, as we found Invoke Despair. So keep plussing over here. And sure, we can Invoke Despair, wait on Corrupt, just deal 6, draw 3. And wait on drawing with Bankbuster so we don't discard to hand size as much. Maybe even play another one. Sure. And then next turn I can potentially cash in the first one, make a pilot to crew the second one. Opponent's got their own Invoke Despair, deals with Sorin. Okay, so swamp number 8. And then, yeah, we can do what we described last turn. Crew Bankbuster, coast is clear. Hit the opponents down to 9. So we're 1 damage short of killing them with Corrupt, but I can Invoke Despair here and finish the job with Corrupt next turn. Might still be safer to do this now in case our opponent finds 8 points of damage to kill us. And then should be able to finish the job with Invoke Despair. And there we have it, awesome. So finally got to see our Corrupt actually deal some direct damage to secure the win. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, our hand's decent. Bankbuster into Trespasser. And then now double Invoke Despair, so those could be effective if we can cast them all. Farmhand points towards maybe an Invoke Justice type of deck. Could see Wedding Announcements next turn, which is something we can also eventually take out with Invoke Despair. So we'll take 1. Opponent passes. Okay, we'll play a Trespasser and then could attack with Bankbuster, which is probably fine, unless our opponent has like a Fateful Absence in hand. In which case I might regret it. Right, destroy evil instead. That also makes sense. Could have also hit a Shieldred later. And we still have double Invoke Despair for our quote-unquote card advantage. So not the end of the world. Although this turn's not going to be particularly exciting. Opponent with the Wandering Emperor at least has to discard to the ward.
Now you've done it. Hat's coming off. You are not much of a roadblock. Remember your training.
So Invoke Despair can clean up Creature and Planeswalker, leaving Sarah Paragon in play. And a Go for the Throat can maybe take care of it. And we'll want to kill Paragon before going for another Invoke Despair, I think. So ideally find something else we can play alongside it. Just a swamp. Yeah, let's go for the Throats, maybe wait until their upkeep, in case they have some protection spell. Another Farmhand. Gets the Plains. So our opponent might be holding a bunch of removal for creatures since we haven't deployed any in some time. So now we can go Celestus plus Invoke Despair. And still draw 2 cards, hopefully. And there's a third Invoke Despair, yeah. Often one finds another. And now Trespasser can make their Paragon less effective if they have another one in the future. Do we need to cut down? Probably not, even though it does make my Invoke Despair a little bit better by killing the creature and essentially drawing an extra card. I've got 8 mana in play right now. Yeah, maybe I'm okay discarding land actually. And then cut down Farmhands. 7 mana, yeah, that's fine. And then this will exile 2 creatures. Play Bankbuster and pass. It's gonna switch back to daytime. We get to loot with Celestus. So maybe I wanted to draw with Bankbuster in response here. But now we'll get rid of a Go for the Throat since we still have Invoke Despair in hand. And there's a Lay Down Arms, which we kind of suspected. That's okay. End of turn draw. And then fine to Invoke Despair again just to see a few extra cards. Don't necessarily want to overextend with Bankbuster and Trespasser in case our opponent's holding a Farewell. Although they might have fired it off last turn, I guess, instead of the Lay Down Arms. So maybe draw with Bankbuster and see what's next. Swamp. Yeah, we could Invoke Despair and then play another Bankbuster. Or just Bankbuster, draw, plus Trespasser. Still going for Wandering Emperor in case our opponent has an Invoke Justice to bring it back. No creatures in my graveyard to drain the opponent either way. And now we're at the point where we would love to draw Corrupt since we have a ton of swamps in play already. It's going to be another Lay Down Arms, that's fine. And then we get to draw. So we'll cash in our Bankbuster here, get a pilot. And that could create the other Bankbuster to attack, even though opponent could have a Destroy Evil in hand. We still have another Bankbuster, so I think we'll be fine. And then hit them with the Invoke Despair. And that's gonna do it, awesome. Okay, so what's the final verdict on Monoblack Burn? Of course, we're working with a ton of powerful cards like Shieldred and Invoke Despair, so does adding Corrupt make the deck better overall? Maybe as a one-off I could see it in these black decks as a way to surprise the opponent if they're not playing around it, but I don't think we need to go super hard on 3 copies necessarily, and I would rather have cheaper interaction and maybe run more creatures at scale into the late game like Evolved Sleeper that are still nice top decks late into the game, but also gives us a proactive play if the opponent's maybe struggling and missing land drops, although I did like the fact that our deck didn't necessarily present a ton of creatures to opposing removal spells, and we were able to sometimes just win by activating Bankbusters and waiting for land drops to set up a lethal Corrupt, so that's kind of the best case scenario for that card, but too many decks in Standard play must-answer creatures like Shieldred that we cannot really afford to keep in play, since otherwise the opponent gains too much life and Corrupt is no longer lethal, so that's kind of what I'm struggling with here. And then opposing copies of Reckoner Bankbuster also ended up being pretty annoying for this Monoblack deck to deal with, so maybe having more insta-speed answers to it like Infernal Grasp could help. So those are some things to think about going forward, but for now I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.